Just make sure you're recording it first. That's brilliant advice, that is.
Well, we all know what happened last time when you, with first half an hour we did, and then you realised you hadn't hit a fucking big red button.
Bloody cheek. Bloody cheek. The amount of pissing years I spend editing this shite. Anyway.
Well, the last episode, we did half of it before you realised you hadn't pressed the bloody big red knob, for crying out loud.
I didn't press the knob, no.
You hadn't recorded it. Recorded fucking half an hour of nothing. Great.
Well, it's because we've had this chat. I'm suffering from burnout at the moment. My head's up my backside. I haven't had a holiday in about a zillion years, and I need to have one because I don't know how the episode of this pod's going to go, but I am really suffering from exhaustion at the moment because I never get a day off for one reason or another. Executive stress, as Del Boy used to call it in Only Fools and Horses. Yeah, man. But anyway, we should probably give a shout out to dear listener because there is a gaping hole, by which I mean we didn't do an episode last month because we just couldn't cram it into our schedules, could we? We've both been really busy, haven't we? That's right. There's been a hole the size of Bonnie Blue's growler, which is probably about the same size these days. Well, so we're going to try and make up for it. Probably shouldn't give her any airtime, to be fair. I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't do that, really. Well, we're gonna hopefully make up for the... throwing a sausage up Oxford Street, wouldn't it? Anyway, go on. Yeah, we'll try and make up for the glaring... obvious no episode last month by making this one an extra specially good one. Now, we've given out loads of flyers for this podcast, so by rights, this month, there should be 1 million people logging on to listen to it, so we should have a respectably sized audience when this episode goes out. Yeah, maybe get an extra 4 people, who knows. But anyway, Horace, how are you? I word on the street is you need to have a rant because you've been busy, so over to you. Well, I don't know if rant is the right word, but I have saved up. Maybe rant is a little bit strong, but I have saved up an awfully large amount of news to run with. Anyway, you know what that is, don't you? That's is that Dudley Moore? That's an homage to Dudley, which is the old religious singing. You should be able to guess what I've been listening to this week that I dragged out of the archives. No, what? No, Enigma. Oh, I remember that. You remember that? A load of old shit, but everyone liked it back in the day. It's a load of old monks chanting over the top of a like a breakbeat, wasn't it? And you know who put all that together? You know who was the mastermind behind that? No. It was Pelé, the Brazilian football player. Did you know that? I beg your bottom? It was Pelé, the Brazilian football player. You are actually joshing, aren't you? Yeah, it wasn't really. It was a Romanian. Well, it's April Fools, isn't it? For Christ's sake, it was Michael Cretu, who was a Romanian German. Michael Cretu, who's that? I think his name. Yeah, I don't know if it's Cretu. It's Cretu. He was a bit. He was. I've got it. He sounds pretty damn cretinous, whoever he is. He was half Romanian and half German, but I'm not sure which half was which. So he must have had Romanian trousers or something. Anyway, brilliant. Yeah, he sold. Do you know he sold over? They sold over 800 million copies of that. Remember that? 800 million. Oh, back in the day when you sold physical units. He told his wife that was either going to be a massive hit or a massive flop, and it was a massive hit. Yeah, it was. I couldn't get rid of it. It was in the charts like a bad smell for about 10 years. It was great. Talking of you saying bad smells. Talking of bad smells. The week before last, I was constipated for 2 days, and that wasn't the nicest experience I've ever had. But then, well, it's probably because you ate 100 weight of after eights or something. Probably because yeah, right. Yeah. I once had an after eight before 8, so bollocks to them. Welcome to Backstage Pass, the comedy music podcast by a couple of ex-bandmates with banter, touring stories, and essentially 2 blokes having a laugh. With myself, James Maverick, and my good friend, Rob Newson, a.k.a. Roger The Horace. anyway, I've been listening to Enigma this week. I've been listening to I got Grace Jones's first 3 albums on a limited edition box thing. She did 3 disco albums at the beginning of her career, which were actually pretty good. Nude Swirl, do you remember them?
No.
Right. And
all right, the London one, yeah. All right.
Nude Swirl, Mega Force Entertainment. It's a good album. That dig that out. I've been getting my grunge head on this week, and then I went for the 3-disc reissue of Aha's Hunting High and Low, which I have to say, although we'll not get stuck on Aha because I know you're an absolutely enormous Aha fan. But
I had that massive Scoundrel Days rant on the last episode, didn't I?
Well, the 3 extra discs you get with Hunting High and Low are not great at all. The only track I like on there is the dance American US remix of Train of Thought, which you've heard now.
Well, you played that to me on the weekend, didn't you? It is good, yeah.
I'm so sorry, pardon. And then Sad Cafe's Greatest Hits, which I was driving home from work about a week ago, and Everybody Hurts. Is it Everybody Hurts or is it Every Day? No, it's Every Day Hurts.
Everybody Hurts is REM, isn't it?
That's REA's. And the Every Day Hurts is Sad Cafe.
REA's. You love
the only bloke in a band that looks like he's got AIDS and hasn't. That's REM.
There's a pub quiz question for you. Who's the bloke that looks like the only guy in a rock band that looks like he's got AIDS but actually hasn't?
I'm pretty sure we won't be able to get away with that, but I couldn't care less. Sorry. Anyway, Sad Cafe. That's. Do you remember that song? Probably not. I think that's a bit before your time.
Who's Sad Cafe by?
Oh, they were like an English sort of.
Oh, is that the name of the band?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember them at all.
What an uninspiring name for a band.
It's right. They might as well have called themselves like Pocket Fluff or something. Do you know what I mean? It's so massively.
If you saw that on a board outside a pub tonight, Sad Cafe, you wouldn't go in.
Oh, they sound excited. I'm fucking going to that.
That sounds awful. I'm not going in there. Anyway, they had a one-hit wonder with Every Day Hurts, which you might know it if you heard it. It was like.
Do you know what? I'm going to write a new project next week called Dower Restaurant. Yeah, get in. What a load of old shit. Sad Cafe.
Yeah, miserable old bastards. That's what it should have said. Yeah. Anyway, so. So I've been pretty busy this week, and then of course the big musical news. Which I was going to save until a bit later, but I can't save it. Which is that Peter Klett is back in Candlebox, of all things to have happen.
I have no idea what you're talking about. That's fucking usual.
Well, he's cut his hair. And he's back in Candlebox for those people that are into that band, which I think is me, and that's pretty much about it.
Yeah, sounds like it, yeah.
Anyway, he's back in Candlebox.
Well done, congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much, yes. Who's that? Who? Sorry, who? Anyway, so he's back in Candlebox. So that's great news for the people that are into that. Prefab Sprout are back together.
Oh, I like a bit of Prefab Sprout.
Oh, dear? You know them, do you?
Yeah, what was that classic? What was that classic single? The big hit. Something about Albuquerque. What was that tune?
Oh yeah, that's the King of Rock and Roll. That's called
King of Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
Hot dog, blah blah blah, Albuquerque.
Hot dog, jumping frog, Albuquerque. Yeah.
Hot dog, jumping frog, bad shit lyrics.
That'll be 15 quid to the MCPS for doing that, probably.
Yeah, we're screwed now. Podcast band.
They're back together. Just referring back to the Candlebox there. They're from Seattle, and I've planned my summer trip to Seattle this year. So I'm going to Seattle for 10 days.
Yeah.
And my friend in Seattle who listens to the pod, shout out to him. He knows who he is because he doesn't want to be named. Right? Right. Yep. Oh, sorry. I got to pick... Hang on. Right, sorry. So...
I've got to pick what? What?
I had an issue with my nostril. Sorry about that. I've got, you know that thing when you've got a spot developing inside a nostril, but you can't find it or see it, but you can feel it. You know that thing?
Well, I don't know. I don't eat filth after AIDS and ginsters by the bucket load, so I don't get AIDS of the nose like you.
Right. Well, I've got something happening in my nostril that I can't find with my finger, and I'm worried.
Wow.
It's if that breaks cover and comes out here, it's going to explode and take the street with it. But it's really painful today. So anyway.
No, I do feel for you. It is annoying when you get a spot like inside your bod somewhere. It's not very nice.
Yeah, and you know it's coming, and you know it's gonna break through at some point, but it hasn't just yet. So my friend in Seattle, who doesn't want to be named for reasons unknown, I imagine something to do with the FBI, has asked us if we can give him an update on Steve Banff.
What the bloody hell's that?
Well, I was talking to him and he asked me when we were going to get some more news about Steve Banff. And I said, who's Steve Banff?
What are you on about?
I know. And he said, the guy who got into all the trouble that you guys talk about, Steve Banff. And I was like, I don't know who Steve Banff is. It turns out that he actually meant Frank Boff.
Frank Boff?
Yeah.
How did he get from Frank Boff to Steve Banff?
I don't know.
What a lemon. Does he just stay in the evening sniffing glue or something?
No, I don't think he does. No, he's got kids. No, he asked for a Steve Banff update. I said, well, there isn't really anything else to tell about Steve Banff, as he's now been rebadged, because he's dead, which doesn't really help. It doesn't really help with any more current updated news because he's dead.
Well, unless we stumble across another Frank Boff controversy in some old news somewhere.
That's right. Unless we find out another story about him having a Pringles tube in his trousers or whatever it was you came up with before. But I was going to tell the story about how that particular friend of mine was ejected from a public house in London for having too large a rucksack, which I always thought was a good story. And I've never known anyone be thrown out of a pub because they had too large a rucksack.
No, neither have I.
But he was thrown out of a pub because his rucksack was too large, and every time he turned round, he was like taking out tables and people and stuff with it. And in the end, they asked him politely to leave.
Oh, hang on a minute. Was the rucksack on his back, and he had one?
Yeah, yes.
And then he got inebriated and was just smashing the place up because he didn't realise what he was doing.
Imagine Mr. Blobby wearing a rucksack. He was in a very crowded pub in London. Sort of walking about with it on his back, and he wouldn't take it off, and he kept knocking everything over all the time. And in the end, they politely asked him if he would mind vacating the premises.
What a lemon!
And that was the same night that he needed to find a bathroom, which he'll never forgive me for telling this, but they used to park in those days the tour buses underneath Earl's Court Tesco's, which has a huge, great car park under it. And all the tour buses, when the bands used to play in London, used to park underneath Earl's Court Tesco's because they could get power and everything else. Now, what's the one thing that you need when you're on a bus and England doesn't provide? I'm sure you can work that out.
A toilet.
Exactly. So you can't do anything in the bus, and if you go to America and you go around America, there's always a toilet. Wherever you are, at any time of the day, there'll always be a toilet, an open toilet that you can go and use to do whatever you want to do in it, and you don't have to worry about finding a toilet. There's always a toilet in America, although you have to ask somebody where the bathroom is because they call it the bathroom, right? So in England, when you park a big load of tour buses underneath an Earl's Court Tesco's, there's no toilets. So you've got to find somewhere to go to the toilet. And he had to find somewhere to go to the toilet that night. And when I say go to the toilet, I mean go to the toilet, right? And he had to go, we had to go all the way up to the roof of the Tesco's because you could get up on the roof, believe it or not, and go to the toilet on the roof. So he actually went to the toilet.
He crapped on Tesco's.
Yeah, he crapped on Tesco's while I was keeping watch on the stairwell to make sure that no security guards came up. This is before the days of security cameras and everything else.
Fantastic.
But I remember looking over and thinking, once again, this is a low point, isn't it? Watching somebody crapping on the roof of Tesco's. Pretty bad. Anyway, cheers to my friend who's probably listening now and probably gone all red, but he knows who he is. I'll be seeing him in the summer.
So, Horace, you and I apparently have both been to a few gigs last month, but you went to a few different ones to me, didn't you? Tell me about them. Who did you go and see?
I went to 2 concerts on... first was with my brother. Shout out to my brother, Chris.
Oh, you went with my brother, did you?
My brother, yeah, I went with my brother, yeah, that's right.
Brilliant.
I went to see Green Lung, Unto Others, and Satan's Satyrs, which I actually thought was satyrs, but it's Satan's Satyrs, because they said it. Anyway, it was good. Green Lung were really good.
I've never seen Green Lung. What are they like live?
They're like trad metal. They're a little bit like, what's that band that I like, Ghost, but not Witch Hazel. They're a little bit like Witch Hazel. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
Only I saw them support Clutch last year, and they were very good, and I was very impressed. The singer looks like he's in the wrong band. He sort of wanders on. He's got short hair, slick back hair. He looks like Dave Vanian from The Damned, and he doesn't look like he's in the right band. But he's a very good singer. They were really good, and they held the interest as a headlining act. I always used to struggle with the when you go from transition from being a support band to a headlining band.
Yeah.
You can't just do the support slot and be longer being a headlining band, because sometimes that kind of doesn't work. But they've made the transition from a support band to a headlining band quite well. They break up the show. They had a few women come on playing flutes and accordions and I can't remember the name.
No one came on and played the bassoon, did they, Horace?
Nobody of that. There was nobody of that talented that came on, mate. Unfortunately, they never asked me to do it. Imagine that. But no, there was nobody playing the bassoon. But they had a little mini bit with some drums, and they had sort of some kettle drums and things, and they had the stage all layered, so they had it in sort of 3 steps coming down. It was really good, and it held my interest for the set, because I would have normally got bored halfway through, but I didn't. It was good. Satan's Satyrs are like, I quite like them. They're like a sort of baby electric wizard with sort of flares and those coats that people wear that make them look. They look like the coats they wear look like they're made out of the mats that used to be around the toilets in the 80s. You know, those furry mats.
Yeah.
When you used to go to your nan's house in the 80s and sit there having on the toilet, you used to look down and she'd have one of those furry mats, that used to go around the toilet. They look like they've got jackets made out of those. They were really good. They're all flares and sort of, that sort of thing. And then Unto Others, I wasn't really sold on them. I think they're a little bit overrated. But apparently, the women, according to Mrs. Emma Barnett from Barnett's Brutal Bunch radio show on Total Rock Radio, she says that they're there for the women. Apparently, the women go berserk for that band.
All right.
They're like a sort of watered down Typo Negative, crossed with a bit of The Cure slung in. They're all right. The guitarist, who looks like he's got long sort of flowing black hair, and he had high heels on, like in the Office when Ricky Gervais wears those high heels.
Yeah,
and and he looks like, and he's he had high heels on like that, and he was doing all posing when he was doing his solos. It was all right, but I don't know. They're all right. You have to look them up. Unto Others, they're massive though. They're a big band, but they were okay. And then, of course, after that, I went to see the Might of Pantera with Power Trip and King Parrot. King Parrot were brilliant.
What were Pantera like then? And there's this new guys.
Pantera were really good. It was great to hear those songs again. They played them all really well. Phil Anselmo singing really well. That kind of worked. Zakk Wylde was really good. It was really good.
What was Charlie Benante's drumming like? Because I've always really admired his drumming. He's a bit of a ledge, isn't he?
It's funny. He is a bit of a ledge, isn't he? But he can't quite do Vinnie Paul, can he?
I don't know.
He can't, can he? He is good, but he can't quite do the same fills that Vinnie Paul could do. Only Vinnie Paul could do those fills. You know what? One thing I always remind, when I think of Vinnie Paul, I think of that bit in that song that I can't bloody well remember the title of it, where he does that whole bass drum fill all the way at the end for ages.
Is it Becoming?
Yes, it's Becoming. Is that the one with the squeak in it?
Yeah, that's the one. It's insane. That's it. It's just insane, isn't it?
That's it. And at the end, And at the end, he does the and he does a bass drum fill, but it's going like twice as fast as you think it is.
Yeah, it's mental.
And his beaters on his his beaters on his drum pedals, they always sound like they were balls on the you know what I mean? Because they're going so fast.
It's just the way they're produced.
The way I know, I know it is, but that's the way
they're produced like fucking sticky toffee pudding, aren't they? Do you know what I mean?
Oh no,
it's just ridiculous.
They're those. They've got to be those little ones that people were using for a while that are on the stick. You know that
they're like mine. So I've got a Tama Iron Cobra, and that they brought out that patented new beater where it's like a disc, and you angle it so you get maximum slap attack on the kick drum head. And I think he used to use one of those.
And it looks like a little hammer. It looks like doesn't it? A sort of weird little plastic hammer with the metal up the back, and it looks. Mine's
like a round disc, but you can get the ones with hammers, and they've got extra weight, like a square hammer, so you get an extra attack on the old slap. So it's, do you know what I mean?
They do look a bit gay, though. That's the only thing. They do look a bit.
Rob, no, we've got to edit that. We're gonna get banned, you lemon.
What, you can't say?
No, you can't say. We'll get in trouble, Horace.
Well, all right then. Anyway, I was saying about Pantera before I sidetracked myself off into Vinnie Paul's bass drum beaters, which always used to make me laugh. These support bands were King Parrot and Power Trip, and King Parrot are Australian and they're very good, and they play really well. But I feel I ought to say about Power Trip. Do you know about Power Trip, the band? Have you ever heard of them?
Power Trip? No.
Yeah. Well, they're an Australian band as well, I think, and they're like a thrash band, but they're or sort of speed thrash metal band, but they're actually really good. But the singer, he passed away, and it was sort of touch and go whether they would actually carry on as a band. But they did find a new singer, and they've got a new singer now. You'd like Power Trip, 100%. They're like sort of old school Anthrax, and they're really fast, but they're actually really, really good. But one thing stood out for me: they were all dressed up like a thrash band, but for some reason the singer had like shorts on, and then he had smart shoes and socks on.
Well, that's always funny.
I know, and they were pulled up really high as well, so that like the bottom half of his legs looked like a businessman, and then the rest of him looked like he was in a thrash metal band, which was absolutely hilarious.
Levi neck high on the vocals.
Yeah, and he was absolutely brilliant. They were really good as well. Really enjoyed them. So yeah, that was my two gigs. Now swinging the thing back the other way. So what gigs have you been to?
Well, so I went to a couple, and one of them, of course, your good self was at, because the legendary Bobby Dazzler sorted us out yet again with VIP passes for the Electric Ballroom to see the wonderful and very extraordinary Dirty Loops. Mate, what a gig that was. I mean, I think it would be fair to say that you and I, Roger the Horace, collectively, over the years, have probably seen hundreds and hundreds of live bands over the years, from all the touring we did, sharing a stage with bands, and all the gigs that we paid to go to. It might even be 1,000 for all I know, right?
Oh, yeah, probably is.
So nowadays, it takes quite a lot to impress me when I see a band, but Jesus, Dirty Loops certainly did. I don't know how you felt, but it was like, for me, it was essentially like witnessing 3 virtuoso musicians right at the top of their game, and they so delivered. And I've got to say, one of the things I was really surprised about was Jonah Nilsson, the keyboardist and vocalist, because weirdly, like on record, and if you see him on video, he's kind of like the understated member of the band, because as a band, the drummer, Aaron Mellegard, he's an amazing drummer, isn't he? And he always gets his moments to shine on their songs. And basically all their music is essentially centred around Henrik Linde's world-class bass playing, isn't it? So Jonah Nilsson kind of just sort of sits in the pocket doing the vocals and the subtle keyboards, holding it all together on record. But live, man, I thought he was spectacular. His talents really shone at that gig. And I think my favourite bit of the whole gig was that ballad that they played in the middle of the set. Do you remember when it was just Jonah and Henrik in the middle of the stage, sitting next to each other? Jonah was playing the piano and Henrik was playing some light bass work. And that intimate little number under one spotlight. The atmosphere was amazing. You could almost feel like the neck hairs on every single member of the audience standing on end. It was amazing. The whole gig was amazing. Amazing gig. And as Bobby Dazzler quite rightly said after the show, it was probably a really special night, that, because they're never going to play a venue that small again, I imagine. They're onto bigger things, aren't they?
They are an interesting sort of prospect, aren't they? Because they are one of those bands that fills up a reasonably big-sized venue in London, yet most people in the world you'll meet won't have ever heard of them and probably never will.
Yeah.
And you've got, obviously, for those people that don't know who they are basically all, I would say, I mean, giving it a broad term, I would say sort of they're like a jazz funk band, aren't they, really, or funk band, not more sort of...
Definitely pop. They're definitely pop, but they've got their own sort of twist on it, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of everything, isn't it, really? I mean, you've got... And they all sort of... You know, the drummer looks like he should be working in a library, and the
do you know there's something about that drummer? He's so brilliant. He's the only drummer I know that can get away with wearing a rubbish jumper whenever he plays. He always wears some sort of jumper, and doesn't his sleeves get in the way?
You wouldn't play drums in a jumper, would you? I don't think, because you
no,
especially not a roll neck.
Like in Follow the Light, in that video, he's playing the most obsessed drum parts you'll ever see in a pop song, and he's got a cream sweater on. I mean, who the bloody hell blags that and gets away with it?
Yeah, you don't do that sort of thing, do you? I mean, we haven't seen that sort of behaviour since the days of Chris Cornell and Jules Holland, when he came on in that enormous, great Frank Boff cardigan.
Yeah, well, let's not regale episode 4's Frank Boff hilarity, because I'll wet myself.
You can't come on stage with any sort of gravitas I don't think in anything woolen, to be perfectly honest. I mean, wool is not something you associate with playing instruments. And
well, Dirty Loops did, and they got away with it.
Henrik's he looks like one of My Chemical Romance, obviously, for those people that don't know, and sticks out like a sore thumb, doesn't he? But as soon as he starts twanging away on that, how many strings did he have? 14 or something on that?
He plays 5 strings and 6 strings.
When he starts using pedals and all that sort of thing, I mean, it's ridiculous, to be perfectly honest.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
They were really good, and I defy anybody to go and watch them and not enjoy it, even if you don't even like them.
Or to go and see them and not be impressed by just the sheer high-level musicianship on show. They were stunning. Absolutely amazing. I'm so glad I went.
And then when we... For those people, the band did a signing afterwards in the venue, didn't they? Mm-hmm. And we stood in a line for an hour, didn't we, to go up and get our...
Well, I didn't, because I couldn't be asked. So I grabbed hold of a security guard. I asked him very snidely if I could sneak through the smoking area and sneak out the back door, and he let me. I just buggered off home.
I remember that now. You didn't stand and line up for an hour like I did. I lined up with Bobby D, because he was getting his vinyl signed.
Yeah.
And when we got to the desk to get our things signed, I realised I didn't have anything to get signed, and there was no way I was paying £50 for a vinyl. 10 pence Horace, no, thank you very much. So I shook all their hands and said, "Thanks very much, lads. See you next year," and left the venue. And that was it.
And the other gig I went to see Jizzy Pearl's Love Hate at the Camden Underworld.
Yeah, and I forgot, didn't I?
You did. So I took my girlfriend, the lovely Hells Bells. I mean, it's only the vocalist Jizzy Pearl left from the original lineup, but they were really good, man. Honestly, he's lost his voice now. Really, he can't really belt it out like he used to. But it sort of doesn't matter, because he's quite a presence on stage, and his banter was really funny. But the band are all great, and they, as far as I can recall, they pretty much played all the songs identical to the way they originally played on their records, which was great for nostalgia. The guitarist was mint, played all the solos and that. It was really, really good.
Can I just ask? Can I butt in and ask? Did they play? What did they play? Two of my favourite records growing up were Blackout in the Red Room and Wasted in America.
Right, so I can say categorically now, I got there. I got there a little bit late. I think I missed about 10 minutes of the set. But by the time I was there, all of the songs were from the first 2 records.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all of them were. It was fantastic. There wasn't one song I didn't recognise. They played all the bangers. And they ended, their encore was Blackout in the Red Room. It was fantastic.
I'd like to have seen that.
They went down really well. The crowd were loving it, all singing along and that. It's really good. It's really good.
Did it have the thunderous the thunderous drums from the first record, which is possibly the most thunderous drums on any record there ever is, isn't it? On that first...
The only thing I was gutted about is that Joey Gold isn't still playing Drums Love Hate, because I love his drumming. But the drummer was good, and the drums were mixed, quite echoey. They were big, yeah.
I don't think it would have mattered who played them, as long as they had them so they were absolutely bombastic.
Yeah, they were hench, yeah.
They are so loud on that first record. Is it Michael Beinhorn? Is that who it is?
I don't know, actually, who produced the first one.
I don't know who made that decision, but the drums on that record are absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, brilliant, yeah. And of course, the other thing that you and I got up to is that we went down to Takedown Festival in Portsmouth, didn't we?
We did. At the Portsmouth Guildhall.
Yeah, what a building that is. It looks really, really regal and lush from outside, doesn't it?
And the weather was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The 2 days we were there, it was absolutely boiling. Mm-hmm. And there was a Wetherspoons next door to the venue where it was $1.99 a pint, which is just like the old days.
Which massively ruined it, yeah. We went to see Sunk and The Hurt Process, didn't we? Our mates in those two bands.
Amongst others, we went to see those two, yeah. We saw Sunk on the Friday night, didn't we? And then they headlined with Earn.
Yeah, Earn were good as well. I quite enjoyed them.
Yeah, we watched Earn play in that cafeteria, which was a bit strange. And then Saturday, of course, we saw the old crew from the old days, The Hurt Process, didn't we?
Yeah, and they were jolly good. It sounded really good out front of house, didn't it? Apart from poor old Duncan, who stacked it. He walked backwards and went flying like Superman, lands on his backside, didn't he? And I actually texted all of them when I got home and said, good set. I checked in with Duncan and I said something like, how you doing? Has your pride been dented or not? And he texted me and went, thanks, mate. It was really fun. That's what it's all about. But my butt hurts. And didn't Takedown organisers plaster his heroic stack all over Facebook and social media, so he can't even get away from it. And now I've bloody mentioned it on the pod, so he's fucked now, isn't he?
Well, I thought he'd try and keep that quiet, because I thought he might have thought a few people didn't see it. Because I know you didn't see it on the day, did you? But
for some reason I didn't know. I think I was answering a text message or something and I bloody missed it.
Too busy fiddling with yourself. And I saw it, and I think a lot of people didn't see it. But anyway, he's all right. The main thing is he's all right. They played really well and it was really good. Yeah, it was a good afternoon.
I've got no worries at all that Dunk would be upset with us for mentioning it, because he's such a good sport and he's a good laugh. He won't care.
No.
Oh, bollocks. I better get that, Horace, sorry. Hello?
I've got a few bits and pieces for you, man.
It's Bobby D!
Just for your information, I'm throwing a barbecue called Bobby Dazzler's Summer Sizzler. You're both coming.
Oh, he's gone. Hang on a minute. How are we going to know when it is?
Anyway, I forgot to say, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. I am all right, except, like I said earlier in the episode, I am, my brain isn't working all that well at the moment because I am suffering from a bit of burnout. But other than that, I'm really good, thanks. And actually, I listened back to one of the podcast episodes the other day, and I just got to put something straight. It really annoyed me, and I can't believe I said it. You remember we were talking about your bassoon lessons at school, and we were talking about us both having drum lessons at school. Well, I'd forgotten about them as well, and you said to me, oh, how many years did you have drum lessons for? And I said, I only had lessons for about a year. I blatantly didn't. I think I had them for about 4 or 5 years. Not 1 year, and I don't know why I couldn't remember that, other than the fact that it was over 30 years ago, and I'm old, I guess. And talk about me being old, it was the big 50 for me in January, so I've joined the half-century club. I think that's worth celebrating. I never thought I'd make it to 30, to be fair, so I think half a century old is most definitely worth celebrating. So, as such, to mark that half century, I've decided to go on my travels starting this year. So in between production projects, I'm going off to see the world, mate. And I might even go and visit Thick Mop and the Pretenders in Vancouver. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, nice, yeah. He'll be chuffed, won't he?
I hope so.
You turning up at his front door when he's in the middle of the night or something.
Well, unlike you, I replied to his email, and we had never been having a little chat occasionally on email. And I've invited myself over, and he said he'd love to see me, so I'm going. But you're not invited because you never fucking replied to his emails because you've got a ping pong ADHD head, and that's the way you operate. So fair enough.
It was one bloody email. I've had one email from him in about 15 years.
I made my boy Isaac laugh the other day, though. We were driving along, right? And this bloke just walked out straight in front of my car as I was pulling out of the junction, looking at his mobile. And I think it's fair to say he was a rather large, portly gentleman, and I was so annoyed at his utter stupidity that before I realised what I was doing, I wound down my window, and as I bared right round a corner, I shouted in his face, "You jaywalking jelly-wobble prick!" And Isaac promptly wet himself laughing, and the bloke looked up all confused. What a dilnot. I didn't even know I was going to say it, "You jaywalking jelly-wobble prick," but it just came... in the heat of the moment, it just came out, and Brilliant. I thought that was quite funny. Old Captain Blubberstarch trying to cross the road. He got both barrels that morning.
Brilliant.
But as it happens, we've come to the part on the show in this episode when I need to mention something. Because I think it's fair to say, look, that the listeners have realised that I do lay into you quite a bit on this podcast. But at the end of the day, it's all coming from a place of love. And what they may not realise is that you, it pains me to say it, Roger The Horace, but you are actually a hero of mine. And I need to unpack this. Because...
Right.
What dear listener probably doesn't realise is when the gods made you, Roger The Horace, someone in the factory definitely forgot to dip you in the shame juice because you don't have any. And as a result, you've got up to all sorts of adventures during your time on this earth. And I've always really admired that gusto you have for new experiences, all the while not giving a rat's what anyone thinks. And I think if we all have more of that quality, I think it would be a much better world to live in. And dear listener, as I'm saying this and kissing Roger The Horace's butt, he's frowning at me like he doesn't know what I'm talking about. But honestly, I could probably dedicate a whole episode of this podcast to explaining all the stuff you've been up to in your life. Because, dear listener, even though Roger The Horace is actually a very kind and generous soul, but I call him a 10-pence lemon because I think it's fair to say that quite a lot of the things you own, Rob, could arguably be described as a little 10-pence, mate. Like your mobile phone's made by Fisher-Price, your car stereo doesn't work properly, your laptop's got AIDS, you don't even have a TV, which is hilarious considering you're the world's biggest telly addict, you've got a dauber projector screen which you can't use in the daylight, and a rubbish subpar stereo system which is not befitting of a music industry legend. But I actually have to hand it to you because you save all your money up over the year, and then you take your dear wife, Kat, and all these awesome adventures across America. So there's my ode to you, and there's some life advice for all the listeners out there. Go at life with the same gusto that Horace does, whilst not caring what people think. Because, for instance, this is going somewhere. What dear listener may not realise is one of the things you did in your life, Roger The Horace, whilst having no shame about it whatsoever, is you took part in the show Come Dine With Me, didn't you? And I want to discuss it.
Yeah, I did that, yeah.
So, Horace, let's discuss your time on the show Come Dine With Me, which aired on Channel 4. I've got the entire series of you in it on my hard drive, and I habitually watch it to cheer me up if I'm in a low mood, because it's one of the funniest things I've ever fucking seen.
Right.
And what can you remember what series it was that you were on, if the listeners are interested in looking at it?
No.
Well, bollocks to that then. I'm just going to ask you all my questions.
I can't remember. I did find it at one point, but it's not on the internet. You can't watch it. They took it. There's certain episodes of it that are just not on the internet. They're missed out in the
well,
season.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. I mean, for starters, in your episodes, you were sporting an absolutely tragic bowl cut. Would you like to discuss that?
Did I have a bowl cut? I didn't think I had a bowl cut in it. Are you sure?
Yeah, you got a bowl cut in it.
I don't think I had a bowl cut in it.
It's back in the days you had that wedge fringe, but it looks really bowly in some of it. It's hilarious. And it's got to be said that your quick wit is on fine display in those 5 episodes of that series. Some of it's comedy genius, mate. So some woman at one point, you're all sitting around at some other bird's house eating dinner, and she turns to you and says, "Oh, I thought you were quite handsome when you walked in." And your response to that was, "Handsome? I look like a pile of tyres waiting to be set on fire," which I thought was brilliant. Everyone thought it was really funny. And at another point, you made a quip as well. You said something like, "Oh, I haven't eaten paint since the court case." And at one stage, do you remember the bit where everyone's struggling around someone's house, eating someone's mega hot soup, and then the camera zooms in on you and you go, "Oh, you haven't got a fire blanket, have you, love?" It's like watching an old comedy show with the 2 Ronnies or something. It's brilliant.
I tried to turn it into a comedy, and I kept getting told off because the directors didn't want that. So I could talk all day about how all the behind-the-scenes bits of it that would ruin people's lives, or effectively, or how it was.
Well, they were stupid then. The directors and the producers were absolutely stupid, because I used to watch that show with an ex-girlfriend, and none of them are as funny as you. You're the funniest person that's ever been on that show by far.
That's very kind of you to say, but I literally, they kept telling me to stop turning it into a comedy, and I was narrating what I was doing as well, and they told me to stop narrating what I was doing because old Dave Lamb, who does the narration on it, does all of that. So you don't have to narrate what you're doing, he does it.
No. But at one point, someone gets it. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. At one point, someone gets a bit of something in their food and picks it out and puts it to the side of the plate and looks a bit worried. And you look up to her and go, "Don't worry, love. It's probably a bit of cartwheel or something." And she looked horrified. That was in my dinner. I said, "I think I've got a bit of cartwheel or something in my dinner." Yeah, there was a horrible thing in my dinner. It was a great big piece of bone. there was one bit where you're all eating around the table, and it's one of the earlier ones, and you're looking a bit nervous. And at one point, a single green bean falls from the side of your gob and goes dong across your plate. And I rewound that bit about 75 times.
I don't remember that part.
It's the only bit where you look a bit unsure of yourself. Other than that, you just look like a comedy genius.
I'll tell you what, if you could see all of the stuff they didn't use, because I didn't tell you, did I? When they filmed my episode, which is I think the episode is about 24 minutes long in total because of the ad breaks and whatnot, and the music either end and stuff. So it's 24 minutes of television. As you know, by editing things, like you edit this thing together, how long it takes.
The bane of my life, yeah.
They filmed in my house to get that 24 minutes of television from 8:30 in the morning, AM, obviously, to 4:30 AM the following morning. That's how long they filmed out my house to get 26 minutes of TV or whatever it was.
That is, I can understand it, but the graphics person definitely earned their salary for this particular 5-episode series of Come Dine With Me, because you know the graphic that periodically comes up to show the contestants' scores at various points in the show. The shot they've got of you look like some kind of Marlon Brando-esque frowning mafia don. It's bloody hilarious, and I kept pausing it every time it came up. And there are a few occasions as well, which I really love, when you break the fourth wall, when you look straight at the camera in disgust every time one of the other contestants says something crap, and that's brilliant.
I got told off for doing that too. They wouldn't let me do that. They kept sending me off.
Yeah, I remember you said they kept telling you off, but that's the funny thing. But one question I have got, when it was your turn to host, why did you make all the guests wear slippers when they came around your house? 2
reasons. One is that there's a rule that applies to our house, which is that my wife made that ruling, which is that everyone that comes in here wears slippers. So that's the reason. I enforced that rule because I knew it was going to end up on national television, and I didn't want to get into trouble. And they like turning small things into big things on Come Dine With Me to make people argue about stuff. So they wanted people to find things to argue.
Oh, so you were playing up to it, were you?
Well, no, they play up to those things. If you'd say, so for those people that don't know, the whole thing is pretty much staged and set up, right? So they have a kind of a little short list of what they're going to do when people arrive and what you're going to do and everything else. It's not spontaneous. It's totally set up, right?
Yeah.
So they try and look for things for you to do that would make good television. I'll rephrase that. Television they can show before the 9 o'clock watershed, because Come Dine With Me was then shown at 5:30.
Yeah.
So that you can't say anything outrageous in it. I wasn't allowed. I'll tell you one of the jokes that was removed, which I said, which is that when you mentioned the hot food that we were eating, it was actually a chili soup thing she made, which was absolutely lovely. And they asked me the following day in the ident, when you sit there in a cafe the following morning and they say, "Oh, how did you enjoy last night's dinner and whatever else have you?" Susan, who's one of the ladies in it who made the hot soup, I said, I really enjoyed Susan's soup. I said, but unfortunately this morning my arse looked like the Japanese flag. And that's a joke I got from a certain person who listens to this podcast as well.
The certain person that may be responsible for our cover art photography, perhaps.
Who may well be, and that was a joke from him. And then I remember when I said that in the thing, and they all panicked and stopped filming, and they were like, "Oh, you can't say anything derogatory about the Japanese flag." I'm like, it's not really derogatory to the Japanese flag, is it? It's not as if I'm saying it's horrendous. It's just that the Japanese flag, if it's anything, it's celebrating it. It's such a strong image that people know that image. Hence the joke being that my arse looked like a Japanese flag means it's completely white except a red dot in the middle, which is the Japanese flag. It's not slagging off Japan, is it, or doing anything like that? So they can't use that. So they said, you'll have to say something else. So I said, okay, well, can I say that my arse looked like a kicked-in fireplace? And they said, which is another joke from the Mr. B joke, the joke book that you can't say anymore. But you can't say that either. So they then said that I also couldn't say the word arse. So apparently that's too rude to say on TV at that time of night.
But you did get away with some other brilliant antics. Like at one point, someone asks you for a napkin with their dinner because you didn't supply any.
I didn't.
And you look really eggy when they asked you, and then you disappear out the room, and then a bit later, after a couple of edits, you come breezing back in with a full kitchen roll and just plonk it next to their plate, which is absolutely brilliant.
I that table was set up for me by somebody who shall remain nameless, and they forgot to put the napkins on it. So I didn't have any napkins, and I couldn't find them. So that's why we didn't have any napkins.
I love the bit where you joke about the woman who didn't eat anything. You know, she was served at all the different houses and didn't like anything and didn't eat anything. And at one point, your piece to camera, you went up to the camera and went, "Well, what does she eat at home then? Crisps?" You had made a very good point, though. And also, what about the bit when they're talking about, you know, what famous dudes have you met? And obviously in your line of work, and because you're in a band, you've met hundreds of famous people and celebrities, but your retort was, "I met Pat Sharp in an airport once," which is bloody hilarious. So you massively played that down, which was classic.
And that's become a great source of merriment in further on down the road in my life, because if you watch it, the lady that was saying that was Lydia, which is the girl that was on Wednesday, and she said Pat Sharp, and of course she didn't know who Pat Sharp was, because not many people know who Pat Sharp is. I'm sure many people listening to this podcast don't know who Pat Sharp is, but for those people that don't know, he had an enormous mullet, didn't he? Possibly the best mullet in the world,
best mullet ever on TV that I ever saw. Yeah,
and I saw him on the way back from Ibiza on an aeroplane, not from the ground. I was actually on the same plane as he was, and he'd been in Oman. He'd been somewhere very hot to do one of his 80s nostalgia festivals, because he does a lot of hosting of things like that. And he was he had the darkest suntan I've ever seen anyone have. He literally looked like a leather shoe.
I remember the photo that you showed me.
And he'd only been there for like 3 days, and he was struggling with his suitcases on the carousel at the airport when we got back to Heathrow. So I went over and assisted him with his suitcases. And when I did that, obviously he
was he a nice bloke?
He was a nice bloke. I've subsequently heard that potentially he isn't, but he was very nice to me on the day. So as far as I'm concerned, I just sneaked over, and there was nobody around him, and nobody was asking him for a photograph. And I just said to him, I said, look, I said, it's not really a dumb thing. I said, I know you're going home. I said, but any chance of just a quick selfie? And he obliged, and he was lovely. He was like, oh, where have you guys been? We're like, well, we've been to Ibiza. That's, and I was like, where have you been? And he said, it looks like you've been to Hades with that tan you got. And he'd been to Oman. He told us where he'd been. Yeah, he was very nice guy. And I have got a photograph of it if anybody wants proof.
Brilliant. And last but not least, for the entertainment part of your hosting, you dress up as Cher and do a karaoke number. Now, I can never unsee that now. And this is another example of you being an absolute legend and born with zero shame, which is an amazing quality, as I've said. You just don't give a toss. Now, why did you choose that as your entertainment, to do that on national television? What possessed you to think that would be a brilliant idea?
So a friend of mine got married, Mr. Dan Capp of Walkinsman fame, and that's a folk metal band. Shout out to him. He doesn't listen to podcasts because he's too cool for that, but he's probably in a forest somewhere, flapping a bit of cloth about or doing something equally exciting. So he got married, and at his wedding, everyone they wanted people to do turns at his wedding. So I got up. I'd been to a karaoke night with a friend of mine from Brighton, and she used to sing Shirley Bassey and do Behave Big Spender. And there was a woman that got up one night and did Cher, If I Could Turn Back Time. And I was singing along with it. And I just thought to myself, because Cher's got quite a deep voice, I think I could do a version of Cher's voice. So I took that information away, went to my friend's house, and he had a studio. And I did a recording on a karaoke track of If I Could Turn Back Time by Cher, and it was quite funny, and it was quite good. So I thought, right, well, I reckon I could pull that off. And I thought, what would be more amusing than at Dan's wedding than me bursting out of the back of the stage, dressed up as Cher, singing this song, right? So...
Did you do that then?
Yeah, I went the whole hog, and I actually... In the If I Could Turn Back Time video, Cher's got the costume on where she's basically just wearing a body stocking with a couple of seat belts under her runway.
Yeah.
And a leather jacket and a great big wig and high heels. Took me ages to get high heels in my feet. They were like, my mum found me a pair of size 11 high heels, mate. They're like gravy boats. They were absolutely enormous.
Gravy boats.
Yeah. So...
Brilliant.
So I got the costume together, because you need to have the costume if you're going to pull it off, even if you don't sound like the person. If you've got the costume, that's you're over halfway there, aren't you? So anyway, I sang it at Dan's wedding, and it seemed to go down quite well. So I thought it was quite funny. So I just kept hold of the costume. So any time I ever needed to use that, do anything again where I needed to do that, I had a backing track, and I had a costume. So I did it at a festival. I stood in for somebody at a festival and did it, and less said about that festival the better, but that's a story for another time. That's how he upset an entire festival. And then I just busted it out on Come Dine With Me because I still had the costume. The only thing is I couldn't get into the costume as comfortably as I could when I first put the costume on. Let's just say that. I needed a couple of warm spoons to get into it this time round, and I had to lay on the floor to put it on and sort of roll it up myself. Do you know what I mean? To get it on.
Bit like how Richard Marx got his jeans on the front cover of a Peter Fender.
The very same way, although I reckon he just painted them on. I don't reckon they ever went right round the back. He must have cut.
I have to congratulate you, because that is probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen on TV. Now, the whole reason I started this podcast, dear listener, in the first place, is because I think you, Roger The Horace, are the funniest bloke I've ever met, and I've made it my mission, dear listener, to make Roger The Horace famous, like a household name in comedy, right? And I'm not going to stop until I've achieved that, because you are my brother from another mother, an absolute legend, and I love you, mate.
Very sweet, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's why I give myself a blank cheque to take the piss out of you all the time. And I just wanted to make that distinction. How do you like them apples?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Right, so Roger the Horace, the only other thing I have to report is the second Johnny Truant touring story.
Oh.
Yeah, that Oliver Mitchell told me for the last episode, and I shared one, didn't I? But I didn't have time to do the second one. And I think this one might be even better than the Johnny Quiche incident. So Ollie told me once at Virgin Megastores on Oxford Street, Johnny Truant played some Kerrang show there, and none other than Brian May of Queen was announcing and delivering the show between bands.
Amazing.
I know, how amazing is that?
Yeah, that's amazing, yeah. I had a wee next to him. Sorry, anyway.
Brilliant. I don't know what to say.
Sorry, I don't know. We were in a toilet, before anyone wonders.
Yeah. Was he a nice bloke? Did you have a banter whilst you were next to him in the urinal?
We did have a bit of banter, yeah. It was quite recent. It wasn't that long ago. It was at, I can't remember who it was at now. It was at AC/DC.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
They sat him in the it wasn't the VIP, well, it was the posh section, but there was the public were in it. So it was all, and people kept...
Did he get mobbed?
Yeah, he kept getting mobbed, yeah. And he put up with it for ages. And I've seen him in interviews, and he puts up with an awful lot, Brian May. And then at some point, he's just like, I've really had enough of this now. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to go. There's an interview online where he does that, where this German guy's trying to get an interview out of him, and he wants to go to bed. And he's very polite, but he's like, I've really had enough now.
You can tell he's a really nice bloke. He has got a reputation, hasn't he, as being a really nice soul.
Yeah, I held the door open for him as I was leaving. And no, that's not right. What was that? It was the door to the toilet. He was behind me, and I held it open for him, and he thanked me for holding it open. Fair play to him. Yeah. And then we went into the toilet, and we both went to the toilet. Yeah.
Well. Talking about what a nice bloke he is, that sort of ties in actually to this story as well, the Johnny Truant Brian May story, because Oliver goes on to say, he says, and again, I'm quoting this verbatim from a text message, he said, again, Paul Jackson, the drummer, it's always Ollie and Paul getting up to no good. He said, me and Paul broke into Brian's dressing room because we were a bit levered. And he came in and caught us stealing a plate of ham because we were starving and on tour. But he said, Brian turned round and he said we could have it and then offered us some beers as well to go with the ham. And I just think that's pretty hilarious. And he said, bless Brian, he was awesome. And he said, also, the ham was really nice. What a bunch of ham-fisted lemons.
Well, that brings back memories of the ham fridge, doesn't it?
The ham fridge at Hellfest. Brilliant. I'll meet you by the ham fridge.
the fridge with the self-replacing ham in it that was located at Hellfest and used as a meeting point, wasn't it? Over the weekend. This, listeners, is before the days of mobile phones, when you got to a festival, you arranged a place where you'd meet if you got separated. And we would meet at the meet. We would meet at Ham Fridge, wouldn't we, at the Hellfest? We're going to meet at the Ham Fridge.
So, Horace, for this episode's Roger the Horace's album review, I'm reverting to type. And I sent you the new album of one of my favourite modern metal bands, Tsunami Sea by Spirit Box, released on March 7th, and which I think is rather magnificent, and which was met with unanimous praise in the music press. But I'm not going to bother to attempt to sell this to you because I've got a sneaking suspicion it may not be up your alley. So without further ado, it's now time for...
Roger the Horace's album review.
So all that's left to say is... What did you make of it?
What an absolute load of old...
You've been listening to Backstage Pass with myself, James Maverick, and Rob Newson, aka Roger The Horace. If you want to get in touch with us Lemons or ask us a question to discuss on the show, please do get in touch via Instagram by using our handle, which is @BSPpod, or by sending us a direct email to bsppod@protonmail.com. This podcast is brought to you by Maverick Audio and produced by me. If you'd like your podcast or any other production produced, then visit my website at www.maverickaudio.co.uk and message me via the contact form. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until the next time.
Oh.